What I have here are three slightly different versions of the hand-driven Berliner gramophone. After his marketing of the Cameron Reinhardt gramophone that I showed you in another video in Germany, Emil Berliner came back to the United States and in 1894 opened a retail store in Baltimore to market his newer gramophone, which now is a slightly larger machine, and it took 7-inch single-sided records. So these are really the first record players, disc record players, ever marketed in the United States. This one here, the one on the left, is, if you could call it, the most common, but most of them that you will see are very similar to this one. It has a crank here, and it drives this flywheel, which then is connected to the turntable and turns the record. This has what's commonly called a strap reproducer. Many of these have this style of strap reproducer. I'm going to talk about this one, which is slightly different in a minute. But this is the one that you will see in most books. It has a nice, beautiful ID tag in aluminum, which I'll get a close-up in a minute. It also has his patent information stamped into the bed plate or the base wood plate. So this would have been the first one he introduced. This one here is quite special. It's of a similar vintage, but it has been modified with the addition of an electric motor. Now, we don't know who did that. It might have been an experimental model. It might have been something that probably an early machinist or something decided to adapt with an electric motor. Because really, these were considered somewhat of a toy because the sound when you're driving it when it's hand driven, it tends to wobble and warble a little bit. So it's not really great sounding, especially from the speed control aspect. So having an electric motor would have improved it quite a bit. So this, however it came about, is probably the earliest electric gramophone ever made. So someone's put here a rheostat so they can adjust the speed. They've got the electric motor here. What's nice about this one is this pulley, which is a slightly lighter color than most of them I've seen. And it's also got an engraving in it, which I'll show you when we do a close-up of the two machines. And I don't think I've ever seen another one quite like that. So this is a very special machine. You may have seen it. There are a couple of pages devoted to it in one of the books by Tim Fabrizio and George Paul. So check that out and you get some good close-up pictures of it and a little bit more information. Then we move on to this one. This is a different style of hand-driven Berliner gramophone. As I said before, part of the problem with these ones was the regulating of the speed. If you're doing it by hand, the speed can sort of increase and decrease as you're turning the wheel. So they came up with the idea of having what's called a slip clutch. And what that does is, as it gets too fast, the clutch will engage slightly and slow it down. So it's a friction mechanism. So this is it here. I'll show a close-up. We also have on this one, which is unusual, sort of like a cast strap reproducer, where these are machined. This is cast, which is why you can see it's sort of cracking and falling apart a little bit, like a lot of early cast machines with pot metal. They tend to crack. So this is slightly different. Otherwise, the machines are all essentially the same. There's a rest for the reproducer to sit here. Other than that, some of these parts are anodized. This one, the one in the middle, the electric one, the metal parts are anodized, and it looks like that's the same as this case. And that would indicate it's probably around 1896, 1897. So let's take a close-up look at these. Here's a close-up look at an original Berliner hand-driven gramophone. You can see the ID plate there, and it may be hard to make out on the video, but there is the patent information stamped into the baseboard. There is a good view of the reproducer, and the diaphragm on this one is metal. And you can see there's a little bit of slight color to the casting, showing it's anodized. A little bit of a copper look to it. And these are the original funnel horns. And then if we go over to this one, This is the one with the slightly different reproducer, the cast one. So it's a strap reproducer, but it's slightly different, much thicker. And its diaphragm is also metal. And here's a good look at the slip clutch. And you can see this one has the Berliner decal, similar to what was on the trademark. And then the patent information, I don't think it's stamped into this one. And then we have the electric motor version. Here's the electric motor version. Let me just get that out of here. And you can see it's anodized. You can see the strap reproducer, exactly the same as the other one. You can see the electric motor here, how it drives the flywheel. And you can see they've actually taken the hand-driven part of it and moved it. You can see the screw holes where it was originally. And they've moved it, which is great because at least they didn't lose it. And then we got the patent information on it. So you can see that. That's very unusual. I don't know if I've seen another one. And it has its original horn. So it's quite nice to see 3 of them all together.